Well, hey there, it's Elke.
And Jen.
And we are here with another episode of the Jen and Elke Clarke Show.
Yeah, and today we're talking to you about how to create a great store name on Zazzle.
And this may seem really obvious, but it's not always obvious when people are starting out, or when you started out and you've got a name that's stuck with you that you can't change, because that's the real point here, is it can't change. Then what can you do about it? So we're going to talk about both of those things today.
So first of all, when you're thinking about creating a store name, we've spoken to you probably before about how you want to think about a store name that has meaning to you and has some sort of coexistence with what your vision of your Zazzle store is going to be. When we first started out, we thought that the store name was actually going to be somewhat like a username. So mine was actually Jen Clarke 78, and I had a couple other ones that really didn't make too much sense, just because I thought that I could change them, or it was something that at that point in time I had no idea what I really wanted to call my store name. So I thought that I could just do something to try it out. But in the end, it actually meant that that store name was going to stick with me, and I couldn't really change it fully. We'll talk about how you can change it halfway, but you want to start out with a store name that makes sense for what you want to do. And this is a really great way to start brainstorming about what you want to talk about and what you want to have in your store. And then also, if you already have some sort of like fun names or words that are associated to what you think you might want to create as your store on Zazzle.
Yeah, so think of your niche that you want to sell in, or if you want to sell in multiple niches, that's going to change how you approach choosing your store name. So if you're very specific and you think, okay, I'm only ever going to do occasions, for example, then you can create a name that has more of that type of feel to it, and things that people would resonate with or even understand, like even saying Jen's Occasions, right? Like it could be as simple as that. Or it could be something where if you're in the wedding area, in the wedding niche, for example, there seems to be a bit more importance associated with the name, so that the customer is choosing a wedding invitation design from a company, which is your store name, that seems more regal, or so more out there. It's like, I don't know, Cedar and Vine or something like that, right? Just so that it sounds cool and it's elegant, but it's not really anything in specifically like that tells you that it's one thing or another, but that it feels elegant. And then that way you're already portraying to the customer with your store name a kind of like an aspect of your branding that you want to get across to them, so that they know, like, and trust you, so that they'll buy from you specifically and actually tell their friends about you, so that you'll get more customers coming your way after you do really well with this one customer. And that's huge, because that's word of mouth, and it comes all the way back to you deciding on what your store name is. And it's like, oh my gosh, now there's a lot of pressure. But what happens if you've already done that, and you've chosen your name, and you've got a lot of products in your store? You don't want to switch it out and move all those products to another store just so that you get that URL from Zazzle. What could you do?
Well, there are two sort of workarounds that you could do. First of all is changing the store name on your store home front. So you're not actually changing your URL, but you're able to change what your store name is. So you can actually start to bring in that brand recognition with your older URL. Unfortunately, when you do direct people to your Zazzle store externally, or anyone comes across your Zazzle store, that URL will be that URL that you chose previously, that was your original store name. Yeah. However, what we want to say?
No, it's okay. Just tell them how to do that. Yeah.
You can go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so how, because that, maybe we just said, you can't change your name, Jen said you can't change your name. It's true, you can't change the URL, but you can change how your store name looks when it's associated with a product. And you do that by going into your store settings. You have to do this every time for each store. And you have to go into the settings, and then into the top part where it says store name. And there's a part there that allows you to fill out your tagline, your store name, and a description. So that's where you can do that. And that easily then allows your products to be associated with whatever store name you've chosen now, rather than the URL that you chose when you opened the store.
Mm-hmm. And then the second way that I was thinking about that you could change your store name and change the URL is actually open up another store. However, obviously, as you mentioned, you don't want to change all of and move all the products over. You can create collections in your new store that have the most popular products that were in your old store previously. And you can actually put those products into those collections. So you're creating sort of a venue for people to see those products that were in your first store and your second store with the proper store name.
Yeah, it's kind of a workaround, and it's almost like creating a little mini Pinterest account on your Zazzle platform, on the platform for Zazzle, where you're redirecting the customer specifically to certain collections and products that you want to showcase. It's not most ideal, but it is an option, especially if you're curating your designs very much so, especially like when it comes to things like wedding invitations or set patterns or designs. Like if you're an artist, that would be really cool as a way to go. A third way is to actually get a redirect, right, for your URL.
Mm-hmm. But that's externally, or
Yes.
is that, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, you can, if you have well, if you want to explain.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Frog in the throat is always an issue. All right, so yeah, the third way is to literally create what's called a redirect, but that would mean that you'd have to buy a URL, right? Or
Well, you'd have to have some sort of host and provider externally other than Zazzle. There is something that works with WordPress, which is a plugin called Pretty Links. There are some ways that you can do a redirect. However, that's a little bit more complicated and much more tailored to the specific way that you've got maybe an external website set up, or if you want to actually go with a host. Or a domain URL provider. We personally use Namecheap.
yeah.
So that's a little bit more tailored to your own specific situation. But there is an option for you to do a redirect if you have built up your Zazzle store to be a very large Zazzle store and you want to keep all of the products there, but you do feel the need to change the URL, then there is obviously a workaround for that. But changing the name in the description and go in your Zazzle store settings, you can definitely do that. So the name will be associated, the new name will be associated with your Zazzle products, but the URL won't change. Then you can create an actual new store and have that as the new URL and the new store name, and then create collections. And then you can also create newer versions of the products that you think that need to be moved over. But you're always able to use that workaround with the collections, and then use redirect if you want, which is your third option.
Yeah. So, just by listening to us and telling you what the options are, it's kind of important to do your store name properly at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
That's the really important part. However, if you are going to switch and make an entirely new store and start to either move products over or redirect customers with collections, then make sure that you don't dismiss the old store. The old store can stay. We're always a fan of making sure that you only delete products that are definitely not working for the customer. Like if they have defective templates, or if they have spelling mistakes or something like that, then definitely that's a delete option. But if not, then let those be there and allow that to be even a proof that you made that design first, rather like that's your copyright, for example. So when you're transitioning from an old store that you don't like the name of to a new store, make sure that you don't just completely delete that old store or hide it, because we've had so many sales from some of our stores that we started with and that we fixed and moved on to something else. But those original products that we made in the original stores, despite the name, are still selling because they're obviously still good designs. And we don't want you to lose out on that kind of opportunity for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's, I think, the gamut of everything that we have for you to help you decide on your store name. One more thing that we wanted to actually, I just realized it while I'm saying this, is make sure that you check to see that everything is not trademarked. So if not everything, your store name is not trademarked. So now that you've gone to the point where you said, okay, I need a new store name, or starting out with a great store name, and you have a great idea, it fits with everything, please check, especially with the US trademark government website, so that you can do a little search and see if anything pops up. And if it does, or even just Google, because you can tell right away if there's someone's using it, then it's really important that you don't use the trademarked name, because then you're really going to have to fix it and you're going to have to shut everything down and start again. And we don't want that for you either. Okay, so that's the end of today's show. I think it's a really important topic to discuss. If you have any questions, please post them in the chats so that we can address them and help you out. And always join our Facebook group if you're not already in. If you're watching on YouTube and don't know that we have this really awesome Facebook group where we do a lot of training like this. And we'll see you in the next training.
The Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur, and the link will be in the description of the video. And we will see you next week for another Jen and Elke Clarke show. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Jen and Elke Clarke Show.
What we believe to be true is that if you build your online Zazzle business using the 3 pillars, perceivable, passive, profitable, then you can create a business that gives you your dream life.
To learn more about how we can work together, visit elkeclarke.com.